Well, the Conductor is a public-private partnership with UCA that offers a number of support services to startup businesses across the state. Recently, this group and about 20 other organizations participated in a retreat to flesh out the Arkansas entrepreneurship policy framework, which includes 56 recommendations for policymakers at the state and federal level to consider to advance business growth. Joining me is Grace Rains, Executive Director of the Conductor. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me a little bit about this group in this coalition with you guys, and maybe start first with what the Conductor is and what you guys do.
Yeah, so we're a public-private partnership between UCA and Startup Junkie Consulting, and our mission is to empower entrepreneurs, innovators, and makers. So we do that in a variety of ways. We provide direct one-on-one consults, we do workshops, webinars, and direct technical assistance. And we have a variety of programs like a Kiva Loan program and 10X Growth Accelerator. But essentially, we just want to lower barriers to starting and growing business, and we do that through providing direct resources and then advocating for entrepreneurs.
So I have an idea for a business, I come to you, or do I have a business that's already started and I come to you?
Either way. We'll help you either way. We have resources for both.
All right. Tell me about this framework that you guys put together. You joined some other organizations in a retreat at the Rockefeller Institute to go through the motions and figure out some answers on this. Who were some of the other organizations that you guys partnered with?
Yeah, so initially we worked with the Kauffman Foundation and the Conway Foundation at the Conway Chamber to create the summit. We received funding for both those organizations to pull together a bunch of organizations from across the state. So mayors, city council members, other entrepreneur support organizations, and then entrepreneurs from across the state in all 5 regions came together. So some of them were the Venture Center, the Paragould Chamber of Commerce, the Conway City Mayor Bart Castleberry came, and so just a variety of organizations to provide different perspectives from different areas of the state, but also different areas of focus like local leadership all the way to entrepreneurs themselves.
The Rockefeller Institute has a process, don't they? They put things through a process to get some solutions here. I want to talk about some of those. What were some of the outcomes, maybe some of the biggest takeaways that you saw from these 56 recommendations? We don't have time to go through all 56 of them, but we do want to hit a couple of the highlights.
Yeah, so initially we came in with a bias that we were going to have 5 different policy maps for the different regions. What really came out of that discussion was more rural versus urban recommendations. So what do rural entrepreneurs face versus urban entrepreneurs? And we tried to integrate that into the framework and also provide recommendations for both. And so some of the issues that urban entrepreneurs faced were lack of venture capital. That's not even on the radar of those rural entrepreneurs. They're more focused on childcare, transportation, workforce, things like that.
Broadband.
Yeah, broadband, that's a huge one. That's no surprise to anybody, but yeah, broadband access as well.
There's a lot working on that. All right, well, let's go to, let's just take the topic of workforce development initiatives. That probably applies to both. You got to find the right workers to scale up your business, to get your business off the ground. What were a couple of the recommendations that y'all came up with from all this conversation?
So from a workforce development standpoint, what we're really looking at, there's so many great workforce development initiatives happening across the state. That's a big buzzword right now. What we want to look at is how do we integrate entrepreneurial development into that? How do we create entrepreneurship as a viable path for workforce development initiatives and create it as a viable option for people that want to enter the workforce? And so integrating entrepreneurial development into workforce development, and then also, with those workforce development initiatives, how do we create more accelerator programs, more incubator programs and spaces for people to start and grow business.
Business license requirements, another big topic that you all debated. It's something I hear a lot from a lot of businesses that I talk to. There's just so much red tape to have to jump through. Can the state of Arkansas find a way to better streamline that process?
I think at the state level, absolutely, but I think there's even issues at a local level from a code perspective that we've seen. The Institute of Justice has us as the 3rd worst state when it comes to onerous, licensing requirement for low-income jobs. So, I think there's a lot of work there at the local and the state level, but I think it's removing some of those licensing requirements, but it's also just streamlining the process and making it easier for people to understand, what licenses do we need and how do I achieve those licenses.
One of the recommendations I think that y'all came up with was to almost put like a roadmap on how to navigate getting your business off the ground. And then I know the Department of Finance and Administration has some sort of package like that now, but it seems like there could be an even easier way to, and I've started a couple businesses, so I know what it's like to have to jump through some of those hoops. Is that one of the things that you guys might pull together?
Yeah, so a lot of it is policy recommendations, code changes, things like that, but some of it is just how do we put together a roadmap for entrepreneurs, for the resources that are out there, for the licensing requirements, for all of the documentation that it takes to start a business. How do we do that at the state level and then also locally?
If you need a media partner for that, I'm committing Talk Business and Politics to it today. So,
all right, I'm going to hold you to that.
All right, I hope you will. You mentioned childcare and transportation earlier. I actually helped lead a panel discussion on childcare and the problems that are there. It's not only an issue of finding good childcare, quality childcare in a lot of different areas of the state, but finding workers for childcare so that you can have some of those businesses. How big of an issue is that for rural Arkansas? Is it a problem for urban entrepreneurs?
I mean, I think, when you look at the childcare availability across the state, I think it's an issue for anybody. In our discussions, we saw it far more in the rural areas than we did in the urban areas, but it's definitely an issue. When the small business majority looked at barriers to entrepreneurship, 1/3 of the entrepreneurs they talked to that had children said that childcare was a barrier to them starting and growing their business. And so I think across the nation it's a problem, but it's definitely something that we saw as a problem when we talked specifically to Arkansas entrepreneurs.
Tax reform, everybody always wants to reform taxes. We're lowering the income tax rate there, but y'all came up with some suggestions for some tax reform as well. Can you bullet point that for me a little bit? What do you think you might be asking the state legislature or even our federal delegation to do?
So, our organization, we are staying away from lobbying and just providing direct, recommendations. We want to advocate for entrepreneurs. We're not currently a lobbying organization and never will be.
Yep.
So as far as,
You're just a conductor, aren't you?
Yes.
See, all right.
Yes. So we're, we want to put these recommendations in front of the people that can make the change, and we want to, kind of lower the barriers for them to, create, policy that makes it easier to start and grow a business. But, as far as providing direct recommendations or lobbying, that's, not our expertise and not our area of focus.
All right, but you did come up with some suggestions that some entrepreneurs said this would be helpful. Yeah, all right. It's in the report.
Yes.
All right, we'll have that in the story on our website when people want to access that. Also, too, student loan debt relief was mentioned. That's been a little bit of a hot topic and a little controversial topic in Arkansas over the last couple of days, but longer than that even. What was the consensus among the folks in your framework policy?
Yeah, so our thoughts there, and before it was a hot topic, we had it in our policy, our original policy map, and we thought about taking it out for this policy map because it is such a hot topic. But we really do feel very strongly that when you start talking about what are the barriers to growing a business, debt, especially student debt, comes into play to be able to take that leap into not having that traditional job. And so we really want to look at what are some ways that we can lower that debt relief for those that choose to go into entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is a huge driver of the economy, and so there's some benefits to incentivizing people to go into becoming small business owners and entrepreneurs. And so I think one of the things we can do there is lowering that risk profile and lowering that debt.
What is an entrepreneur impact statement? This was something that you guys thought that any new laws that ought to be passed ought to have some sort of entrepreneur impact statement. What would that look like?
So I think, there's a lot of policies, laws, even codes that go into place that don't contemplate the effects on small business owners and entrepreneurs. And so our thought there was, if we create a requirement to contemplate that, to just think about how is this going to impact entrepreneurs, and to, install a statement in all policies going forward that say, this is how it affects small business, or this is how it doesn't affect small business, but just to contemplate that overall, because sometimes small business isn't at the forefront of our minds, even though small business accounts for 65.1% of net new job growth. So it definitely is something that we should consider as we move forward with policy change.
We got about 45 seconds left. I want to give you a chance to plug the Arnold Innovation Center in Conway. The Conductor, I think, is housed there, but it's a pretty cool looking facility, I got to tell you. What all is going to go on in the Arnold Innovation Center?
Yeah, so all of our resources and programming will be housed out of the Arnold Innovation Center. Our team is housed there, but we also provide co-working space, rented desk space, but essentially we want it to be a place for creative collisions, for people to come receive resources for entrepreneurship, but also build and grow their own businesses. And we provide very low cost, affordable memberships there for them to be able to do that.
All right, Grace Rain, she's the Executive Director of the Conductor in Conway.
Yes.
Good to see you.
Thanks
Thank you for
having
being
me.
here. Appreciate you sharing all that information.
Yeah, absolutely.